first of all, I'd like to introduce the planning staff. The gentleman seated at the table here is Dylan Pipinich. He's the planning director. Next to Dylan, also at the table, is Joella Thomas, planning technician. Over there by the computer, I guess Elizabeth Osborne? Okay. Elizabeth Osborne, she's new to me, so glad to have you on board, Elizabeth. And Elizabeth is senior planner. And then Robin Smith is going to be over there also at the computer. And I might as well introduce Josh Heddick, who's been helping him set up. And that's Josh. The board members that are present on my far left is Garrett Craig, Sylvia Cunningham, John Rees. On my far right is Lauren Burmeister, Tyler Schaefer. My name is Dave Wing, and I will be chairing the meeting tonight. We first must concern ourselves with the minutes of the last meeting. Has everybody had an opportunity to review those minutes? And if so, would somebody care to make a motion with regard to their approval?
So moved. Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded that the minutes be approved. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. The minutes are approved by voice vote. We only have a single matter on the agenda tonight. That's special use permit application 22 bunch of zeros 1. An application by Jeannie and Cosby G. Anderson to locate an Airbnb in an existing residence. Are Jeannie and Colby Anderson present? Can you be Jeannie? Okay, thank you. Well, some board member going to be presenting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The presentation tonight is for a special use permit, special use 22-00001. The applicant is Jeannie and Corby G. Anderson, and it's to locate an Airbnb in an existing residence per section 17.38.180. The applicant is proposing to rent out a 2-bedroom residence for overnight stays and short-term rentals through online hosting program. The staff findings: lodging provided by homeowners for compensation is recognized as a special use allowed in any residential zoning district, provided that the prescribed use is in harmony with the other use permitted in the zone and not found to be contrary to public interest. The process provides for review of physical conditions which exist at the location, the conduct and operation of the proposed use, and whether the combination of these factors will be compatible with the proposed site and surrounding area. To provide the board with information about the proposed special use, the applicant and planning staff have responded to the established 20 questions outlined herein. The property is located in zoning district R3 in the red, highlighted here. Here's an aerial photo of the property as well. The property is in an R3 or a multifamily residence zone. The home is a single-family home with a footprint of 1,358 square feet. The subject parcel itself is 4,200 square feet in size. Here's some of the surrounding properties, some other single-family and multifamily homes. This is looking west off of Granite Street on the opposite side of the street. The location, character of the property, and surrounding buildings. The property in question is located within an area containing single-family and multifamily homes. Most of the lots around this area are 4,200 square feet to 5,500 square feet in size. The parcels located across the alley from the parcel are single-family and multifamily residents. They are also located in the R3 zone. One block to the east and one block south are all commercial zoned. Substantial changes that have occurred in the surrounding land use since the original adoption of the ordinance. No changes in the zoning ordinance have occurred in this area. The property in question is located within the Uptown Edge place type in the comprehensive plan. The Uptown Edge place type serves as a transitional area immediately surrounding the Uptown core, intended for a mix of commercial-centric development interspersed with multifamily residential, but at a scale less dense than in the core itself. This place type also connects the Uptown core with the economic driver place types to the west, including Montana Tech and the hospital campuses. Proposed fencing, screening, and landscaping. There's already a fence around the property, so no proposed changes are concerning landscaping at this time. Proposed vehicle access, circulation, and parking. Vehicle access to and from the property is acceptable for the proposed use. The access is provided by a West Granite Street to the front of the residence and an alley to the south. There is a detached garage located to the rear of the resident and enough room for a couple of cars in the front and in the alley at the garage. Handicap access may be a concern as there are steps in the front of the residence to access the house as well as steps at the rear entrance. Staff feels that the applicant should state this in their listing for the rental. Here's some photos of the front entrance. As you can see, there's stairs going to the front entrance, and the rear entrance has some stairs to the back door. Proposed signs and lighting. The applicant under BSBMC section 17.42.050.A-5 may have a sign as a directional or informational sign no larger than 5 square feet in area to inform guests as to where the parking area is located. In addition, applicants shall be permitted a 1 square foot sign flat against the front wall to the building. Any changes in the additional signage will be subject to review and approval by the planning department. Applicants have indicated that they don't intend to install signage. Regarding lighting, the existing lighting is typical of the residential neighborhood. All potential nuisances. Increased traffic in the neighborhood. As long as occupancy levels of the residence is in conformance with the residential building, it should not increase traffic. Parking, some off-street parking places. Noise. Staff would suggest that the owner does enforce rules through the online hosting program to regulate noise. Public safety and health. Butte-Silver Health Department regulations related to providing rooms for rent, occupancy levels of the building. That the use conforms to objectives of the adopted comprehensive plan and purpose of the ordinance. The comprehensive plan or growth policy designation for this parcel is the Uptown Edge. Staff believes that the proposed use is consistent with the intent of the zoning ordinance to allow for reasonable use of private property. The zoning ordinance permits certain commercial uses to be located within all residential zones. After review by the Zoning Board of Adjustments, the special use application process was created to ensure these types of businesses don't negatively impact the adjacent residents. That the use of the classification will not adversely affect nearby properties or their occupants. Anytime a commercial business encroaches into a residential neighborhood, there is potential for the use to negatively impact the surrounding property owners. In this case, when considering the low-impact commercial nature of the business and the owners limiting the number of occupants, staff feels that it would appear to have a minimal impact on adjacent properties and property owners. In conclusion, based on the above information, staff's analysis of the review criteria and any public opinion as it relates to the criteria, the board must determine if the applicant has presented evidence to the satisfaction of the board that said undue detriment will not result from the granting of a special use permit for short-term rental. Section 17.38.160, special or conditional use permit decision of board requires staff to refer the application to the board within 15 days of the receipt of the application and all requested information. The board shall within 60 days deny the application and give reason for the denial in writing to the applicant, or approve the application, and the zoning officer shall issue a zoning compliance permit with conditions specified therein. Sorry,
You're finished, sorry, Joella?
that's everything. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Would the applicant care to add anything to the staff presentation, additional evidence? It sounded pretty good to you? Okay. Do any of the board members have any questions of the staff? No questions? I'll now ask if there's anybody present that would care to speak for this application. Okay. Hearing nobody, I'll ask if there's anybody present who would care to speak against the application. And sir, if you could identify yourself for the record, spell your last name.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Chris Harris, Harris. Oh, okay, should we start over? Chris Harris, 820 West Galena, Harris.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, members of the board. In the first place, I'd like to thank the applicant for actually making application, because that's a rarity these days. They're popping up all over town without application. I happen to be generally receptive to zoning changes, but not this one, or any one that looks like it. And here's why. And any member is free to come down to the 800 block of West Galena and watch what I'm about to tell you go down, and then you'll know why I'm here. These situations, from a traffic point of view, are legally unmanageable. We can talk about off-street parking. Off-street parking is unregulated. If someone comes to rent my house, I can suggest and have a term, they need to accept that there's off-street parking, and they can go out and park in the middle of the street, and there's nothing anybody can do. Right now, one door down from us on 820 West Galena, these people, 4 vehicles came and converged on this house to work on this pipeline out here west of town. So we have right now a 1-ton dually, 2 F-350s, and an F-550 with snowmobiles. They came with snowmobiles. So now we get the unloading of snowmobiles and all the parking inconvenience for the entire street in something that should go down, without a doubt, in a motel parking lot. It's unmanageable. And I'm asking you to deny it, and I'm asking you to deny it with a message to the Council of Commissioners and the county attorney that we have to get in front of this issue, and simply put, we're not. Does anyone have any questions of me? Very well, Mr. Chair, members of the board.
Is there anybody else present that would care to speak against the application? Not hearing anybody. The applicant, ma'am, you're going to have the opportunity to speak in rebuttal to the objections that were raised by the opponent. You'd have to come up to the microphone, and it's on. Red thing is on, so you can.
I would have to actually agree with him. The parking uptown is horrific. It's worse than Manhattan. It's unregulated. I had to call the police to have an abandoned vehicle taken away from my house, from the front of my house. So it is a concern, and I can understand where he's coming from. But I do have a 3-car garage that I feel that the people who stay there could be told to stay in the garage. So
Sure.
I think that would alleviate that. But there is a huge parking problem, especially right here on this corridor. So
Okay.
he has a good point. Thank you.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Now close the public portion of the meeting and open it for board discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I have no idea how to say it.
There's a button. Shoot, this button right there. Yeah, there you go.
Too much modern technology.
It's a bugger sometimes.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with the parking problem, but I don't think that a rental property of this kind with a three-car garage in the back that is primarily going to be rented for health, people who are looking for some place to stay when a relative or friend has a health problem, is going to be a problem. I know there are a couple Airbnbs just off of Montana Street. They have a two-car garage, and I always see the cars parked in front of the garage off the streets. I think they are more aware of being cognizant of a parking problem than the people who actually are renting permanent housing and do bring cars in. Now, as Mayor of Walkerville, I can't tell you how many times I call Community Enrichment, the Parking Commission, and, you know, I'm not going to air my grievances about those operations, but there is very little done in some cases when you have a problem of cars parking all over the place. I just don't see that with the presentation or with this property. And I really feel that a lot of these Airbnbs are the people that rent or stay there for a couple, 3 days are less of a problem than our residents within our own city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reese. Does any other board member have a comment with regard to this particular matter?
Mr. Chairman, it is, I just don't have a light. Now I'm all screwed up. I think
You're a
Mr. Harris.
guy, and you know that little button to click? Yeah.
No, my microphone is on, the light just doesn't work
Oh, okay. I'm
for
looking.
everyone to.
Oh, the light doesn't work, okay.
I feel attacked. I think Mr. Harris makes very, very valid points. Parking is terrible. Mayor Reese makes very good points too, that there's no enforcement of anything. I've had abandoned cars in front of my house. They do nothing, and it's the most frustrating thing when you cannot park in front of your house when you come home from work. That being said, I think with a three-car garage that is accessible, and if the renters, I don't know if that's what we call them, can be kind of asked to park there, I guess I would also question to planning staff if there's any verbiage we could maybe add as a condition if we were to go the direction of approval to maybe, I don't know if you could require it, I don't know if that would even be the right thing, but just so that there were some assurances to Mr. Harris and people who are concerned about that stuff that,
Okay.
you know, maybe this isn't going to impact that and may even help the situation.
Okay, thank you, Tyler. Any other board members have any comments? Mr. Burmeister?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think I was kind of thinking the same way as Tyler. You know, some encouraging language to concentrate the parking in her private property and discourage on-street parking. You know, I'd like to see that there's two commissioners out in the audience and to hear a passionate statement about the parking. I think we've all seen it, and so hopefully it will be something that is addressed. I know the county's making strides to do that with new parking garages and everything else, but I don't see necessarily where this particular establishment is going to further exacerbate the problem. It's a problem that exists, whether it's a private residence or an Airbnb or whatever, and so I'm in support of the application, but I do also agree with Tyler that maybe we should add some conditional language. I don't know what it would be because it's more of a recommendation than requirement, so maybe staff could offer an idea on that, I don't know.
Okay. Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
I would agree with the other board members. You know, the parking issues aside, I think the applicant has a good plan to minimize any problems with her rental, and you know, I agree with Lauren and Tyler. If we can make a recommendation or try to encourage you know, use of the garage for her tenants, I think all the better.
All right, thank you. I'd like to add a comment of my own. The opponent, Mr. Harris, lives at 820 West Galena, which is more than 5, maybe 6 blocks from 304 West Granite, and his comments had nothing to do with any parking problems that may or may not exist in that particular neighborhood. So I'm not so sure, other than a generalized complaint with regard to parking in Butte, maybe in particular more the uptown area. I don't think his comments have much impact with regard to this particular situation.
If Sylvia has something to say, I would encourage you right now, Sylvia, but if, I would like to add one more thing, if that's okay,
Sure, you
Mr.
bet.
Chairman. We rarely see the applicants actually come here for Airbnbs. As Mr. Harris stated earlier, there are a number of them everywhere, hundreds, I think, in town here. The applicant has actually came forward and done it right. And I think if we get into a situation where these applications come in front of us, which we want to encourage and we want to have some say in where these are going, these ones that are kind of minimal impact, if we start denying those, I'm afraid we're never going to see another application in front of us
Yeah,
again.
push it deeper underground.
It's going to go the opposite. And, you know, again, going back to what Mr. Harris said, we do need to get in front of this. We do need to get some sort of plan. There's got to be some sort of enforcement. I'm pretty sure that in Bozeman, when you have an Airbnb, the government is well aware of it, or the city is well aware of it. And here it's a very unregulated Wild West of Airbnbs, and I don't think that happens in a lot of other cities the way it does here. And we need to encourage this sort of behavior, I guess you'd call it, so that it does come in front of us and we do have some say, because it, at a minimum, is the only place we are getting any sort of say in this, is if a person does do an application. I would just don't want to discourage that any further than it already is.
I agree with you. Just wondering if we learn, or if the county, city learns about an Airbnb that is in operation without a license, special use permit, can it be ordered to shut down? Yes.
Mr. Chairman, so actually, you've seen a number of these recently, and some of them have been based on violation. So the enforcement is there's a staffing issue there. Generally, the planning department enforces on a case-by-case basis, meaning on if somebody turns them in, then they've gotten a letter that says you need a special use permit. And some of those that have been before you just recently were based on violation. There's a public education section of this where I don't think people know that they need a special use permit. Just as a side note, the planning department in the future will be doing some public outreach to kind of try to help with general knowledge of planning and zoning rules, including Airbnbs.
Okay.
Also, I wanted to add, as you're aware, that staff doesn't recommend approval or denial of special use permits anymore, but if there are thoughts that this is an applicable use, we do have a couple standard conditions of approval that we've generally put on these. One being that they get an accommodation license from the health department, and two being that the occupancy be limited to the occupancy load as derived by building codes, which is 1 person per 200 square feet, which may also alleviate some parking
Okay.
if they are limited to a certain number of residents in that building.
Okay. Thank you, Dylan.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Jeannie, if she doesn't mind.
Could
I'm
you
not
come
aware.
forward, please, Jeannie, and be at the microphone?
I'm not aware of is there a contract on an Airbnb when they rent it?
It depends on how you list it. If you use Airbnb, yeah, you have a list of regulations and laws you have to, follow while you're there.
So in other words, you could, on those,
Oh,
say
yeah.
parking is required in the garage
Right.
area.
But as you noted, my primary goal is for healthcare, for
Right.
providers or for families of patients. And so I intend to market it in the healthcare industry. And it's my property, so I get to tell people, if you want to stay here, you park in the garage, right? And you don't have parties and you don't do whatever. I'm not really looking for the big Airbnb market. This is not what it's about. But when I called to find out if I could get a business license, they said, well, first you have to do this. And I said, what's that? And now I have to get a public health accommodation license? I'm like, really? Okay. So, I'm more concerned about my residents with some of the shenanigans that go on over there, believe me. There's rock and roll going on, and there's drugs, and there's abandoned cars, and I'm thinking, we'll see how this goes, here come and stay in my nice little house. But it is a darling house and has a great history, and I'd like to do it.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you. And welcome to my world with all those other problems. I commend you for coming forward because.
I didn't know I had to.
Well, no, and I don't think many people do. And as was pointed out, I think we have to be, cognizant of what's going on with these and get more people to come forward so that we know where they are. And I think by you doing this and doing it the right way.
It's a pretty arduous process, and it's not cheap,
Right.
right?
Right.
Each of these applications is $100. The health department one, I think, is $100 plus the $40. I don't know. And then the business license, right? And it's time consuming. And I have the time, and I'm kind of like a person who's really super honest, so I'm going to do it all, right? But there's a lot of people that if they heard about this, they'd say, they have to catch me first. I'm not going to, right?
Right.
So,
But thank you. I appreciate it.
okay.
Thank you. Okay, well, hashed over uptown parking and this a fair considerable amount here. We do have this particular matter in front of us, and does anybody care to make a motion with respect to it?
Mr. Chairman, I'd move that we grant the application.
Okay. I do know that Mr. Burmeister and Mr. Schaefer had some thoughts about conditioning our approval.
Yeah, can we discuss that before the
Sure.
motion? Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's just a motion at this time.
So could I first ask that Mr. Pipinich restate the standard conditions we've used in the past?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Burmeister, so the public health accommodations license has been a condition of approval. To be honest, that's just a reminder, that's a requirement through the health department anyway, but it's part of that education piece that the applicant get a public accommodations license. And just for your knowledge, they do a one-time walkthrough, make sure you have fire hydrants, stuff like that. And then the second one be that the occupancy load of the Airbnb be limited to that as required by building code, set by the building official, which is one person per 200 square feet of floor area. So I think this one's 1,500 something square feet, so it'd be limited to 7 persons.
Thank you. And then I still feel, it's, the parking issue is not something we should make a condition, so to speak, and I think Ms. Anderson kind of got our point, so I don't know that I would add any special language unless Tyler or somebody else thinks we do.
No, I actually feel Ms. Henderson will be doing the right thing, and she seems like a very honest person, and she's doing the right thing by being in front of us tonight, and I don't think we need to add more burdensome parking stuff, and just encourage her to please follow through with that.
Okay. Well, at this point, then, we just have Mr. Ree's motion that this matter be approved. And would there be a second to that motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to amend the motion to include the two conditions that staff recommended.
Is that a part of it anyway, though, Dylan?
Mr. Chairman, the public accommodations license would be required anyway. The limiting the occupancy per building code, I believe would not, because that house was constructed prior to building codes.
Okay, so then that would be appropriate for a condition. So I'm in favor of the motion and in favor of the conditions with regard to housing, square footage. So just where we stand with the motion right now, it's been moved and it's been recommended by Mr. Burmeister that we require that approval be conditioned on the square footage with regard to the house occupancy and also the community health. Did I miss saying that right? Well, go ahead and say it, so we're not
Mr.
gonna
Chairman,
get
it's a
too
public
flustered.
accommodations license through the health department. Like I said, that would be required anyway, but in the future, if they were ever to not get that, then the special use would be revocable
Okay.
for you folks. So it gives you a little bit more.
Okay, so I'm
stance.
thinking we have a motion with the public accommodations license and no more people than one per 200 square feet. Would those conditions be acceptable to you, John? Well, no, it's not up to her, it's up to us.
I'm just saying, I don't think if it's being rented for a health issue more than anything that you would see more than 7 people in there.
No, I don't think so.
Family of work.
Yeah. Yeah. So a motion to approve the application subject to approval, public accommodation license, and no more than one person per 200 square feet. Would that be the motion then? And is there a second to that motion?
I would second that motion, Mr. Chairman.
We can now vote on it. We don't have ballots. Do
We don't have ballots.
Do you have ballots? I don't.
Yeah, we decided.
Ballots, you guys are Johnny on the. Thank you, Robin. Now that we have ballots, we can vote. Thank you. Thanks again. All 6 votes are for the motion, so that means that your application has been approved and you will be receiving a letter from the planning staff to that effect. And good luck to you in your project. It seems like a wonderful one to me. Yeah, you can leave if you want. Or you can stay if you want.
I said I'd like to thank you for not bringing Courtney.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay. Any further business?
Mr. Chairman, we have no other business.
No other business? Okay. Meeting is adjourned.
How's everybody doing?
Doing good.